The wind howled like 1,000 lost souls, screaming through the hollow bones of the earth. Dust devils swirled in the barren wasteland, carrying the stench of rot from lands far beyond the horizon. The sky was not blue anymore. It was a color of ashes, choked with a haze that dimmed the sun into a pale, dying ember. The ground trembled ever so slightly, as though the planet itself was restless. Somewhere deep beneath, something ancient was stirring. For centuries, the people had told stories of them. Creatures locked away since the age of Dhul-Qarnayn, imprisoned behind an impenetrable wall forged from iron and molten copper. Stories so ancient that even the storytellers doubted their truth. They called them by many names across different tongues, but in the language of prophecy, they were Yajooj and Majooj, the twin scourges of the earth, the devourers of nations. Some claimed they were giants. Others swore they were more beast than man. But every version agreed on one thing. They were not like us, and when the time came for them to break free, there would be no force on earth capable of stopping them. The first sign was a sound. It began as a faint metallic groan, like iron being twisted under immense strain. Shepherds in the high mountains heard it at night, carried on the wind from a forbidden pass. They whispered that the great wall, the barrier that had held Yajooj and Majooj for millennia, was weakening. The elders dismissed it as superstition, but the shepherds knew better. The sound came every night, louder and closer, until it seemed to reverberate in the marrow of their bones. Then came the earthshakes. Villages at the foot of the mountains reported tremors strong enough to crack stone walls. Animals refused to graze near the ridges, their eyes wide, their bodies trembling as if sensing something humans could not. Some said they saw shadows moving behind the mist that clung to the peaks, massive, twisted shapes that didn't move like men or beasts, but something in between. On the seventh night, the wall fell. No one saw it happen, but they heard it. The sound rolled across the mountains like a roar of thunder that never ended. It was a sound of metal screaming, stone shattering, and something alive bellowing with rage and hunger. Then silence, a silence so complete it felt wrong, unnatural. And in that silence came the first screams. The shepherds never made it down the slopes. By morning, the mountain villages were gone. Not destroyed, not burned, gone. Where once there were homes and fields, there was only churned earth, streaked with dark stains that the rain could not wash away. Pieces of shattered walls lay scattered, some smeared with deep gouges, as though clawed by something with hands too large for any man. The survivors, if they could be called that, stumbled into the nearest city at dusk. Their clothes were torn, their faces gray with dust and horror. They did not speak at first. They only trembled, their eyes fixed on some point far beyond the here and now. When they finally spoke, their voices broke like glass. They ate everything. One woman whispered, clutching the blood-soaked remains of a child's scarf. Not just the people, the earth, the trees, the stones. They swallowed the land. No one wanted to believe it, but disbelief did not stop the spread. The next night, the attacks reached the lowlands. The stories were always the same, a sound in the darkness, heavy and wet, like meat being torn from bone. Then shapes moving with impossible speed, their silhouettes wrong in every way. Limbs too long, joints bending in unnatural directions, faces, if they could be called faces, that seemed both human and utterly alien, stretched into grotesque mockeries of expressions. Their eyes burned like coals, unblinking, and their mouths were wide enough to bite a man in half. Guns did nothing. Blades shattered against their hide. Fire slowed them, but only for moments. They came in swarms, crawling over each other like ants over a carcass, driven by a hunger so vast it was almost mindless. Cities fell in days. Nations crumbled in weeks. Governments tried to fight back, unleashing their most devastating weapons. But Yajooj and Majooj were endless. For every one that fell, 10 more emerged from the mist, their screeches echoing like war drums across the blackened plains. The air reeked of decay, and the rivers ran thick with blood and ash. Some said they were not of this earth, that their release marked the beginning of the end, the final trial foretold in the scriptures. Others believed they had always been here, lurking in the dark edges of the world, waiting for the day the barrier would fail. Whatever the truth, It no longer mattered. Humanity's age was ending. There was one place left. A fortress city built on the bones of an ancient capital. Its high walls and reinforced gates holding back the tide, for now. Inside, the last fragments of humanity clung to life, ruled by a council that argued over whether to fight or flee. The refugees whispered of a man who claimed to have seen the barrier before it fell, a scholar who carried with him pages from forgotten text, pages that told a final seal, buried deep in the earth, capable of ending the scourge. But to reach it meant traveling through the heart of the infested lands. The council chose their best fighters, men and women hardened by loss, their eyes hollow but their resolve unshaken. Among them was Amir, a former soldier who had lost his wife and child to creatures. His only purpose now was vengeance. And Layla, a healer who had seen too much death to fear her own. Together, they would lead the last desperate mission. The journey was a waking nightmare. The land itself seemed poisoned. Trees stood twisted and leafless, their bark split open like wounds. The ground crunched underfoot, not with stones, but with bones. The air was heavy, filled with the buzzing of unseen flies, and in the distance, always, came the sound, the chittering, snarling, and wet tearing of the creatures as they feasted. They moved by night, avoiding the swarms when they could, fighting only when they had no choice. And each battle left them with fewer numbers. The creatures were cunning, herding them toward dead ends, cutting off escape routes. More than once, Amir thought he saw something larger than the rest watching from the shadows, a massive silhouette with eyes like burning suns. By the time they reached the valley, only 4 remained. The entrance to the seal was a yawning pit in the earth, surrounded by ancient carvings that seemed to shift when looked at too long. The air that rose from it was cold, colder than any winter wind, and carried the faint sound of chanting, though no voices could be seen. Layla went first, her torch casting weak light against the black stone. The tunnel spiraled down, deeper than they thought possible, until the walls began to pulse as though alive. At the bottom lay a chamber, its center dominated by a massive slab of metal inscribed with runes older than language. In its heart was a hole, perfectly round, as if waiting for something to fill it. From his pack, the scholar produced a small black sphere, the last fragment of the barrier that once held Yajooj and Majooj. His hands shook as he stepped forward. That was when they came. The chamber shook with their arrival, the sound of claws on stone echoing like the beating of war drums. The tunnel behind them erupted in a flood of bodies, twisted, snarling shapes that moved like shadows made flesh. Their eyes burned, and their teeth dripped with the blood of 100 worlds. Amir roared, charging into them with his blade, buying seconds of the scholar to reach the slab. Layla stood at his side, striking with her torch, the flames hissing as they touched the creature's skin. But there were too many. The scholar fell, his chest torn open. The sphere rolled from his hand, skittering across the stone. Layla dove for it, her fingers closing around its cold surface just as a claw tore into her back. With her last strength, she hurled it into the hole. Light erupted. It was not warm, not gentle. It was a white fire that seared the air, stripping flesh from bone, turning screams into nothing. The creatures writhed, their bodies twisting, collapsing on themselves until they were nothing but ash. The earth shuddered as the seal closed, and the sound of their hunger faded into silence. When Amir awoke, he was alone. The chamber was empty, the slab cold and silent. The tunnel behind him had collapsed. There would be no going back. He staggered to the center, his body broken, and placed his hand on the seal. It pulsed once, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. And far away, beyond mountains and oceans, in places no human had walked for 1,000 years, something answered. The world was safe for now, but the heartbeat remained, waiting,